Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Monday in the Riv. And we
Is
have
it me or is the time just flying by?
yeah,
August is the end of the week.
yeah, we only got 2 more days left in July. And that's it.
Yeah,
Wait, 28, 29, 30, no, 3 days.
there are 3 more days.
3 days, 31 days in July.
Yep.
I always get these. And the weekend flush came out, and it was a nice flush. You really got some real sewerage in that flush. I can tell you that much. But uh, we talked about you talked about that little. I don't know whether that was an attempted ambush job, but it backfired a little bit. We've got some of our Coogan supporters trying to come in, and I don't know what they expected when they got they called the show. They expected to be met with facts and valid questions. That's what we do. I know your flush was
That's all we do.
that's basically what we do. Yeah, that's right. And I'm looking at the flush now. Opening quote: Politicians are the masters of the art of deception, and the greater the incompetency of a politician, the greater the deception. Like with Paul. And we found out that Paul has a new thing that he doesn't know anything about, which is virtually. I gotta probably submit this suggestion. Why don't we try to figure out what Paul's good at? That list will be a lot shorter to define because so far he doesn't good. He's not good at numbers. He's a vice principal. He's not going to comment on anything. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't take any attempt to learn anything. He doesn't bring in his department heads to explain things to him and the people when things happen. He just covers them up. And now he's given Kenny Fiola a bunch of money to deal with marijuana. And he said it's because he doesn't know anything about marijuana. Well, it is alleged, and I will make sure I say this is alleged.
Alleged.
It is alleged. I got numerous people that called me and said that they have knowledge that Paul, in his earlier days, had very, very good knowledge about marijuana. So I don't know. Something about North Park and a lot, there was, but they called about that thing, and people can dive into that, but it's irrelevant. He's just giving a rich guy more money. Let's pay Kenny to do something else. Yeah, make him garage superintendent, make him a few other things because Paul can't do it.
There is nothing Kenny doesn't touch. Turns to gold in his pocket.
Yeah, except when he has to do it without public assistance from the city.
Right.
He's one of the greatest demonstrations of the welfare system in the world. Because when he got cut loose and he was on his own, he was on the verge of bankruptcy.
That's right.
Whenever he's involved with the city, he's like J. Paul Getty. But Paul has to find him. Right.
He's elite.
Yeah, Paul basically is the non-functional mayor. He doesn't know anything about anything, but we're just going to sit here, give out jobs, run our thing and I know you went into a little detail on what you did with the OCPF and that little thing about the woman on a park bench, and then videoing it. I don't know. To me, that's a little cheesy. I'm sorry. And you did quote something that in the middle, which is not all, but you did actually quote the Bible, and it's a very good quote. Very, very, very good quote from NKJV. What, in case you don't know what that means, that's the New King James Version of Matthew 6:4. I actually like the older version a little better because I like Old English, but I
like the old version better too, but I think people would get a little lost with arms and.
Well, what we'll do is we will we will give them both and see which ones, because I like Shakespeare too. That's an old English. But remember, this is from the New King James Version, that your charitable deed may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will himself reward you openly. So in other words, you get your reward for doing the good thing by doing the good deed, and then the Lord will get you. The old King James Version in Matthew says that thine alms may be secret. Alms is charity when you give.
Right.
That's so in case people don't know Old English. That thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret himself shall reward thee openly. I I like that. But in the old days, you used to be very familiar with the thing of alms for the poor. But I don't know. That's kind of cheesy. And I'll quote not the Bible, but Abraham Lincoln, who said, "Your character is revealed by what you do when nobody's looking."
That's right.
So Abraham Lincoln would have helped a woman and not videotaped it, put it in the newspaper, and used it for political gain. Yeah, well, no, yeah, Linda's got the new King James version. Yeah, I'm partial to Old English, so I like Shakespeare, Tennyson, and all that other stuff. So uh, I just have a habit. But
Hey, David Oliveira says he's a good liar. Can we talk all about this hack of a school committee? I need your input on this committee and how they treat Colin. Well, the dictator sets up how it's done. Okay? The dictator sets the tenor of the meeting. And that tenor is keep Colin out of it. Keep Kevin out of it. Nobody talks to them. Nobody gets them in there. And that's what they get. That's what he does.
well, I
And
did
it's wrong.
know Colin asked us to submit something to the school committee and the superintendent, and I am. But Colin, I'll let you know it's going to be a little bit longer because I am sending them my version of War and Peace. Because I'm going to send them a letter like I sent the transition team with documented evidence of everything I say, like the fact that you have a constitutional right, uh, that we have a constitutional right to be answered, our questions, that you have a fiduciary obligation to ask questions beyond the surface, and that they are violating the law and their fiduciary responsibility. And I'm going to submit excerpts of case law to go along with it. And they're not going to like it. But it's not just going to go to the superintendent of schools and the school committee. It's going to go to the attorney general, the ethics committee, and anybody else that I can file this with to highlight the fact that the school committee is malfeasant in their duties, with the exception of Kevin. You can't vote. You cannot vote on an appropriation by taking the mayor's word for it. I have said it time and time and time again on this show. I've read it. The excerpt from the case from Cornell Law School that says you have to look beyond the figures that are given to you. You have to cast, quote, a critical eye, unquote, on these numbers. You have to examine them. You have to make sure that you are making a good faith effort as a fiduciary, and in this case, as a public fiduciary. I'm going to include this also, that public fiduciaries have a greater responsibility than a normal fiduciary. And I'm not talking about the commercial that we're a fiduciary. We don't just work for money. We work for our clients. Public fiduciaries are representing and spending taxpayer money. That creates a greater burden. And these bozos in the school committee that are looking to get jobs for all their friends and relatives and have ignored the law, and they get away with it. And listen, that's the problem. I I got a Powerball ticket and a Mega Buck ticket again today. I just bought a few more. I'm always hoping to win so I can sue them because they will lose.
And move to South Dakota.
They will lose. Yeah. That's only in the summer. I'm not going to live there in the winter if I hit
I was
that.
going to say, because if
Yeah.
you live there in the winter, you're going to freeze.
No, no, no. I'm not an Eskimo, but it's a little too cold up here. But South Dakota is a gorgeous state, and it's a great place to ride motorcycles. And but
In the
let's
summer.
look at the idiocy of the city. The idiot. Well, we know Paul's an idiot, but let's look at the dysfunction now, because you talked about what the fire chief wants to have this 50-50 patronage list, because that's what it's going to be. I cannot believe if the city council even gives this the time of day. I'm going to tell you how dysfunctional this whole thing is. You want to take 50% from civil service and then have a list of the, so that's going to be a friends list. All our political allies and friends and all their relatives are going to be on this list, and we're going to be able to get them a job without them being on a civil service list and having to get a high enough mark to be considered, because you can only select from the top 3. So I don't know, but didn't Paul Coogan, again, and you said it in your thing about reneging, he promised that meld EMS into the fire department, and he didn't. He also promised to remember to put the police chief back in civil service. And why did he do that? To avoid any idea of politics. And listen, I'm going to be perfectly frank with everybody. There still can be politics the way the system is. If you're in the top 3 and you're politically connected, they can hire you over other. If the other 2 people are more qualified than you were qualified enough to get into the top 3, and unfortunately civil service. But I will tell you, when I got on the Fall River Fire Department, nobody ever got hired except the number 1 person on the list. Every single person that got on the job came in the order of their grade. Every single lieutenant was promoted from number 1 on the list. Every captain was promoted only when they were number 1 on the list. Every district chief, every deputy chief, and every chief of the department was number 1 on the list. Then, during the Carlton Viveris administration, there was a retaliation against somebody on a lieutenant's list who was politically didn't fit, and they jumped him. And ever since then, they routinely jump people, but at least you got to be in the top 3. So that's the key. You can't have your bonehead cousin like Coogan, who can't pass like Mike Coogan, who couldn't pass a captain's exam with a high enough mark to be promoted to captain, can go kiss political ass and become the fire chief, which he did, and he only lasted 13 days. And then we went back to civil service. Firefighters should be hired off the civil service list. And I'm going to tell you right now, the bullshit about it's going to take too much time with the civil service list, we need this list, is bullshit. I'm going to tell you something that I can verify, and I have people that will verify. While I was on a fire department, I saw fire commissioners that wanted to promote somebody because they were politically connected, not wait for a civil service list. They drove to Boston and picked it up. They had one individual, when I was a new guy on a job, the list was running out that day. They called civil service. We want the list. They said, if you don't get it back by 4 o'clock, no promotion will be valid. They drove to Boston, picked up the list, turned around, drove back to Fall River, had a fire commissioner's meeting, promoted the guy, drove back to Boston before 4 o'clock, and got the guy promoted. I've seen them get a civil service list in a day. They can drive up there and get it. They can make a special request. When they tried to jump me for chief and we exposed them, they pretended they were going to look for a list. And then when she went up for the list, it was ready for her, and the commissioner refused to take it because they wanted to delay it even more. But then I got a call about them delaying it, and I called the lawyer, and ultimately they had to do what they had to do. But this is horse shit. We've got people from out of town. I've gotten calls from firefighters I know whose sons took the fire exam. And when you take the fire exam, you can select 3 communities you want to work in. And these firefighters said that their kids picked Fall River as one of their picks. So don't tell me you can't get on the list. Don't tell me you can't put them on. We had a fire academy. I don't know what happened at that fire academy. We were teaching. We were at our fire academy. We were training Westport firefighters, Somerset firefighters, firefighters from all around this area, and we were getting, I think, paid for it, reimbursed from the fire academy. We had
Where did all that money go for that equipment for those buildings?
and
What happened?
we spent millions of dollars building a training facility to have a fire academy at the airport, and we've got it, and it's there. Why don't we have a fire academy now? Okay, it's going to take months. No, it isn't. You go up, get a list from civil service, put the guys on a job. What happened to the fire academy? Reopen a fire academy. You got a training office. Reopen a fire academy. Then put them in a fire academy. Stick them in there for a week. And then after a week, after that, rotate them. One day, and half the class in class, half the class in the company to get training and extend it. That's feasible. When I came on a job, we didn't have a fire academy. I got on the job training. I got drilled every day I went to work. My company officer drilled me. The drill master, the training officer, came in every single day shift I was on and drilled me on all the evolutions. And the companies used to hate to have new guys because they were drilling all the time because they trained us. And we got trained. And the best training is to be on the apparatus. It's all bullshit. Everything they're talking, everything they say is bullshit. It's all a deflection. Just like they're coming out now with that newspaper article. Oh, 90% on up to the NFPA standards. So what are they alluding to? That it's okay to not be up to the standard? Well, 90% of the people and 90% of the departments in the state aren't up to standard. Well, shame on the 90%. Congratulations to the 10%. Nobody's going to argue that you can't rescue more people with more people initially on the scene. You can't argue that point. That is not arguable. So what are they saying? I'm going to show you how dysfunctional that logic is. I'm going to use the same logic. 90% of them are not, so Paul doesn't have to have it. So that means we're going to sacrifice lives. But this is how logical it is. I'm going to give you a hypothetical. 90% of the criminals do not have legal guns. Let's not prosecute them for having an illegal gun. Because 90% of them don't have legal guns, so that makes it okay. How absurd is that? It's called in psychology inappropriate affect. These people are mental. Inappropriate affect means you cry when you should laugh and you laugh when you should cry. You have a mental condition. But the politicians don't have a mental condition. I got to spend my money for my friends and myself and screw public safety. We only talk about public safety after we have fire deaths or there's a major catastrophe like California. They raised, $100 million with all these singers. Now it's been exposed that none of that money went to the fire victims. It went to the NGOs. All the people who were connected, who were being paid to bring in illegals. Now they're being paid. And they had one that they gave to some Native American fund. And because they exposed that and had nothing to do with fire victims, they actually had to return the money because they got caught red-handed. But why does an NGO with CFOs that are making millions of dollars in salaries getting money for the fire victims? Why didn't those people give it directly to the fire victims? But those wokey singers and Hollywood types, oh, well, we did our virtue signaling and we had the concert. Screw what happens to the money. You think one of them would follow up and say, hey, I didn't go there and sing for free for you not to give it to the people who were fire victims? No, just like Paul Coogan. Oh, let's find an excuse where Coogan doesn't have to man people. Well, let's have a 10-year plan, not a 10-day plan. The bottom line is they have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that this council does not give a shit, and this man doesn't give a shit about lives. And I'm speaking as someone who's been fighting this fight. I fought it for 25 years as the president of the union, and I lived it for 38 years. I saw the difference between getting to a fire with adequate manpower and not, and even force not super adequate. But nobody can refute, because the statistics speak for themselves. What's going on in this city is outrageous, and it is dysfunctional. I mean, Coogan's like, I'm going to put the police chief back into civil service, so everybody has to take a test, and we have to select from the top 3. But now I'm going to make a list for firefighters that they don't have to take the civil service test, or we can put 50% of the people on, and they'll all be our friends. So why doesn't he have a problem with this? Bacon's full of shit. You don't need this. You don't
according
need
to Bacon, according to Bacon, it will streamline the hiring process. And
yeah, because they can put on anybody they want. It's like streamlining the process at EMS. Who knows how they hire at EMS? Do you? Nobody knows.
Right.
Cool.
Well,
I know one thing.
That's something I brought up, and you and I have had this conversation. If every firefighter who graduates the academy now is certified in EMS as an EMT, why isn't EMS part of the fire department? Why? Because Seth Akins didn't want to do it because he was in business with one of the people.
Yeah.
Corruption. Because when they became Group 4 and were given huge pay raises, there was promise that they would be part of the fire department. But people don't want to lose their ranks in EMS.
No, well, look, he had a deal. He even made the guy that he signed a contract to be partners with the head of EMS.
Right.
So everything's corrupt. Now, Bacon, it'll expedite it. What do you mean it expedites it? You get all your friends and you put them directly on the fire department. They don't have to take a test. Well, we don't know if you give them the answers before the test, because you're going to trust anything that happens in Fall River. Are you shitting me? Are you kidding? Really? The guy who wrote a report to get a guy fired that he didn't like, I'm going to trust him? I don't think so. You think I'm going to trust Mayor Coogan to have a process that'll, yeah, you can expedite it. Like for what? You can put him on tomorrow. Oh, your cousin came in? He's on tomorrow. Go get your gear. You're all set. Expedite it. What aren't you going to expedite by going up to civil service, picking up a list, making your selection at a fire commission meeting, send it back to civil service, and start the hiring process? That's the way we did it for the last 150 years. This is all bullshit. Just like the bullshit about we're going to put them in Group 4 because they're all going to become firefighters. And it's going to be a lot cheaper because everybody's going to be part of the fire department. We're going to get rid of all these tiers of supervision. That's right. We swear. I swear we're going to do this. They all went down there. Oh, yeah, we're going to be part of the fire department. We're going to meld it into the fire union and everything down here, advocating for it. And then what did they do? It's a completely separate department. Still got all kinds of supervision that you don't need. Go to Providence. Their EMS has been melded into the fire department for as long as I remember. They never had EMS without, it wasn't fire-based EMS. I recommended fire-based EMS. I got the book from the IAFF about fire-based EMS that I presented to the city council 30 years ago. I tried to meld them in. You know why they didn't want to put them in? Because they can't put their friends on, because they got to take a test. That's why they want a local list. We can't get our friends on because they can't get a high enough mark to be considered under civil service. But Coogan's dysfunctional, bipolar. He wants to put the police chief in there to eliminate any indication of policy. You got to take a test. But now the fire department's going to go, oh shit, to hell with civil service. We're going to take 50% of our department and you're going to trust us to do it the right way. What have you done right in the last, I don't know how many years? At least 6 that Coogan's been in. This is nuts. All right? And it's so, like I said, it's inappropriate affect. It's like crying at a wedding and laughing at a funeral. There's something wrong with you. I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say I'm going to put it back in civil service like the fire department did when what happened? Mike Coogan jumped 145 guys. Couldn't pass a captain's exam in civil service, but he was qualified to jump all the captains, all the district chiefs, all the deputy chiefs, all the guys with more seniority than him in grade and in the department, and become the fire chief because he kissed political ass. That's what they want. And that's not theory, that's fact. That's fact. Yeah, you're right. They should all be irrelevant. Yeah, we need it everywhere in government. That's right. We need major changes in everything because they're making it more and more where they control every aspect. Like I said, EMS, there's no control over it. They don't take a test for any rank. They just bestow it on them. You're politically connected? Okay, well, they caught Seth Akins with his finger in the pie with the other guy. The other guy resigned. Now they put somebody else in who was being considered in the first place and has been on the job at least a long time. And I know that she does know the job. So, but I don't know anybody else. But do these candidates have a right to compete for that job? No. When I made lieutenant and captain and district chief, and when I took the test for chief of the department and deputy chief, everybody that was the next grade below had the right to compete against me. And I got up to, I didn't want the deputy's job. I refused it. They offered me the deputy's job. But I didn't get the chief of the department because I knew I wasn't going to get it, but I just wanted to take the test. And they told me that, obviously we're not going to make you chief. You don't do what you're told. You're not going to put lame shit like this out. Like, this will expedite the process. Don't tell me about expedite the process. I saw them open up a rescue, a heavy rescue 2. And I got guys that's still around that'll confirm this. Heavy rescue 2. They opened that baby up. And they promoted a man to lieutenant. And that list was running out. But they promoted that man to lieutenant. And coincidentally, his brother was on the city council. Do we have a heavy rescue 2? No. Did we ever have a heavy rescue 2? No. They opened it up on paper, promoted a guy to lieutenant, never ever opened it up, never bought a truck, never put regular firefighters on to go along with the officers, never made a captain in charge of the company, just promoted the guy whose brother was on the city council. Don't feed me this bullshit. I lived it, and I fought against it. This is what happens when you let these people run it, and not at least civil service. You got to have enough brain cells to get into the top 3. So, if you can tell, this really presses my buttons. It does, because this is gross malfeasance on the part of these people.
Well, I spoke to a couple elected officials. Some were on the fence. Most were on the fence, actually. They didn't want to be committal to anything. But one of them said, it reeks of patronage to me. And what was the first thing you said to me when I said what they wanted to do? You said the same thing. Reeks of patronage.
They manipulate everything, CJ. It's just like those statistics. They're very, very complicated. And I understand that. That's why I don't try to get too deep into the weeds, but they're talking about the Manning levels. Those Manning levels aren't accurate because, number one, the Manning levels are predicated on the community. If you've got a small city down at the Cape, you still need 4 men because it is a documented fact that 4-man crews are more efficient, and that should be the minimum crew in any scenario. But there are high hazard areas like Boston. Boston meets the NFPA standards for Manning. That's why they do, because it's very extremely high hazard city, just like Fall Rivers, New Bedford. They've got it too. But the fact is that when you look at those statistics, you don't look at that. They got 1.7 men on a truck. Horseshit they do. Places like Westport, they have what they call called firefighters. Some cities, some towns have only got a paid driver and they got volunteers. That's why these statistics are watered down. You got to make apples and apples. You got to look at cities like Fall River, like New Bedford, fundamentally the same size, fundamentally the same.
And New Bedford meets NFP standards.
And they meet NFP, yeah. But I mean, those they bring in these statistics to try to justify them not living up to the statistic. That's why they don't want to debate these things, because the reality is they're going to lose the debate all the time. But they're not going to bullshit me. I saw this. I saw what the politicians can do when they want to. I don't want to hear Bacon. It'll expedite the. No, it won't. It won't expedite anything. Like I said, I saw them drive to Boston in the morning to promote a guy that was politically connected, because his list was 9 that day, and there was a bunch of phone calls made to a bunch of powerful politicians were made. They drove to Boston, the civil service, picked up the list, carried it back, drove back to Fall River, had a commissioners meeting, promoted them, and then drove the list back. It had to be back before 4, or the promotion was null and void. How's that for expediting stuff? I saw him promote people to companies that didn't exist and then never opened a company. I've seen a lot of that stuff, but I also saw him jump people that they never did before. Because I started on the fire department, civil service truly was a safeguard against patronage. Because if you were number 1 on a list, you never got bypassed, ever. Ever. And then once one politician did it and picked from the top 3, because it's still legal, it's not ethical as far as I'm concerned. It may be legally right, but it's morally wrong. But now they jump people. But the only good thing about civil service is at least you got to take a test. So if the dummy from down the street that can't get a high enough mark to get on a job, he's always 200th on the list, and you want him on a job, how do you fix it? Well, you get the fire chief to make a local list and you put him on it. Bingo! He's on a job. That's what happened. We had temporary firefighters when the veterans preference was in court on the fire department, and it was in court for a very long time. And they hired a whole bunch of firefighters because we needed them on the job. That's when they dropped the mark to 35 to pass. And boy, that list was large. But Fall River didn't come under that hiring guideline because we didn't have enough minorities at the time in the city. So they wouldn't be taking people with a 35 and putting them ahead of a guy with a 99 like they did in Boston. But we still had to comply. We couldn't put on anybody. They froze all the lists while that was being litigated, whether there's a veterans preference or not. And it was upheld by the Supreme Court. And when that was upheld by the Supreme Court, they lifted that and the list came out. And guess what? Half of those people were gone, because half of those people that got on the job didn't have a high enough mark, because once it was terminated, it wasn't the city appointing them to the job. It went right back to the civil service list, and they hired right by the civil service list. So if you had a 72 and some guy did not get hired during that interim period that had a 99, the guy with the 99 gets on. But then again, what sense does that make? It's fair. It's equitable. And that's, like, as you said in your weekend flush, that's one of the worst things that politicians, they don't like fairness. They want to have the power to put anybody they want anywhere they want.
Hence why they like the EMS system the way it is.
That's right.
They get to put anyone in there they want. It makes them money. They spend that money frivolously sometimes. I mean, I don't know.
Listen, there's no reason EMS couldn't have got in there. They would. You can save $1 million, $2 million on EMS if you meld it with fire department, and it's still an enterprise fund. The EMS billing could be like it used to be, a separate billing, and you can maintain that enterprise fund, and the city could still get that and it would fund a lot of those. It would fund most of those jobs. But then you would have trained firefighters. Think about that. But that's the problem. The current EMS, they don't. A lot of them do not want to go to the fire academy and become firefighters and go
That's
into
right.
burning buildings.
That's right.
So they said they listen. The majority of those people had no intention of ever getting into the fire department, and they lied their butts off to the city council.
That's right.
And the city council now, when Bacon goes in, if they listen to this pack of lies, and I've had a conversation with at least one city council, and I told her everything I told you about today. Don't give me that crap. It's too difficult to deal with civil service. You can go up to call civil service, tell them you want a list. You can send a fire commissioner up there. They'll hand it a list, or him or her a list. Come down, send a fire chief up. Bring the list down. Hire them. Once they're hired, you bring the list back to civil service, and you start the hiring process, because civil service allows the.
Well, his further argument is that it takes 9 months to a year to get the firefighter actually on the job, because they have to wait for a spot to come available in one of 3 academies.
Well, and whose fault is that? Why did Fall River disband their fire academy? Because it would take exactly 1 day to get them into the fire academy. Don't give me that shit. I used to go up and look at the recruit classes every time they came in, and give them their sign up for the union cards, and we ran multiple classes through there. And one of our former chiefs taught for years at the Mass Fire Academy, Paul Ford. We had a fire academy, and we used to train Westport, Somerset, and a few bunch of other people too. I didn't keep track of who we did. I was only concerned about the Fall River firefighters. Well, why did we give it up? To make it tougher to get men on a job? That makes a lot of sense. See, that does sound like a really political great move. We could have got people on a job, but we kept up, and we spent millions.
That's what I'm saying.
Millions of dollars building that training facility.
That's right.
Because I was the opening speaker at the dedication of the headquarters and the training facility. And they were dedicated to Fire Chief Louis A. Shea and Lieutenant Paul Bernard, who died at Roma Chemical. And I gave the opening speech about how one man gave his life for the fire service, Paul Bernard, and one man gave his life to the fire service, Louis A. Shea, a third-generation firefighter. I was there when they opened that fire academy. Now the question is, why did it ever close? We were saving these communities money and making it a lot quicker. You didn't have to wait for a berth in a fire academy. You could have come to the Fall River Fire Academy. We trained Somerset, Westport, I don't know, whoever, Lakeville. We had all kinds of people in that fire academy. But we got rid of it. Just like we pick up the trash, and look what's happened now. Just like we got rid of snow removal, look what's happened now. We get rid of everything that actually benefits it, because they don't have an ounce of brains. They didn't want to do it anymore, and they got rid of it. So now the public is now they're going to use that as an excuse to get a friends list to put their political friends on a job. Because the common denominator of all these moves is giving them the political power to put everybody that works for the city will be through them. So they will owe them, and they owe politicians. We had a civil service procedure, and everything that's wrong with it now is their fault. And they can't BS me, because I was there. They're not going to tell me we didn't have a fire academy. They're not going to tell me we didn't train people from Somerset. I went to the graduations and other communities. What's the reason? What's the reason we got rid of it? Was it too expensive? No. You got to send somebody to fire academy. You got to pay the fire. We got our own fire academy. We don't have to pay. We got a training officer. We had training officers. I know people that taught at the fire academy. I mean, this is just All this is bullshit. They deflection, manipulation, and telling you a half truth, but not telling you why it's like this. It wasn't always like this. That's what they forget to tell you. It wasn't always like this. And everything they say is a half truth. Yeah, does it take longer now? Why? Because they screwed up again. Just like they did with the Manning level. And how long's the Manning level? Now they're going to try to mix up all these statistics and try to pretend that that's an excuse. But that's a rationalization. And it shows you that they don't prioritize the people of Fall River and human life. Yeah, Pete, you're right. These people do. Well, you allow the politicians to run the asylum, and that's what happens. Like Milton Friedman said, you give the government the Sahara Desert to run out of sand in 5 years. Well, you give the politicians all the power and forget that we have the power to get rid of them. Once you start replacing these people like dirty diapers, you will get politicians that will then do the work of the people, not the work of the other politicians. But we see that every day. We see that every day. But you look at the cities that can stand up and say, get rid of these people, and that's what happens. Like your Athens, Tennessee. I haven't forgotten that one, Annalise. That's a great example of what people can do. So people are going to get to the polls this time, because everything you hear is either a distortion of the truth, a half truth, or an outright lie. That's the reality. Everything you're hearing now, they're going to try to utilize this tragedy to get themselves more political power. Oh, we're going to expedite the process. Well, how are you going to expedite the process? CJ, you're disappearing. Get back. I got to ask you a question. Now,
I'm here.
Maybe it's me and my mind is a little too analytical. But if we expedite the system by having a city list, but we don't have a fire academy, does that automatically create a vacancy at the fire? No, it doesn't. We still have to see if there's a vacancy at the fire academy.
Right.
So why would that make a difference except a political difference? Like I said, you can get them from civil service as quickly as, you can get them in a day. You can get them in 2 days. But now, so the excuse is, and it doesn't make any logical sense when you analyze it. We have to wait for an opening at the fire academy. Well, first question is, why did we get rid of our fire academy? Second question is, if we have to wait for an opening, does it matter whether he came from a civil service list or the patronage list? No.
Well, according to what Bacon has said, the law says that if we have a local registry, we're only required to hire 50% of the new hires from the civil service list. Yeah. And people on the local registry don't have to be recent graduates of the fire academy.
Wait a minute. Hold it. Wait a minute. No. See, that's another manipulation of the truth. Number one, anybody on the registry, the patronage registry, or the fire list has not gone to the fire academy yet. Because you don't go to the fire academy until after you're hired. You want to go to Mass Fire Academy, you got to be a firefighter.
Thank you.
And if you're on a registry, how are you going to be on a fire academy? What are they going to put somebody on a local registry for? Somebody that's already been to the fire academy is on the Brookline Fire Department. You think they're coming to Fall River in a pig's ass? And half of those people that got laid off from Fall River and went to Brookline and Newton and those places, they went the first time and came back. They got laid off again. They never came back again.
That's right.
They stayed in Newton and Brookline. This is all horse shit. Oh, the registry people, what are you talking about? You've got to be fired up. You've got to go to the academy now and get the certifications. The laws have changed. Now certifications are required, and you get those by going to the school.
Like being a certified EMT, which would make sense if you've got a fire-based EMS. But again, we wouldn't be able to politically control the EMS. And think about it. If a new mayor comes in and turns around and says to EMS, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a promise was made to make EMS part of the Fall River Fire Department. Effective immediately. All new EMS hires will be hired through the fire department. They will be firefighters. You people are grandfathered in. That's fine. Once you're gone, you're gone. As for your upper management, it's gone. Retire, resign, go back to the ambulance. That's it.
And
Cut and dry.
yeah, well,
Cut and dry.
well, you're right, CJ, because you know what you're doing. You're not reinventing the wheel. Virtually every Cape department hires off because they have two types of civil service lists. Some cities have firefighter lists and lists of firefighter paramedic, a firefighter EMT. And those are two separate lists sometimes. And some of them can be on both lists. You can be on both. But down at Cape, virtually, as far as I know, virtually 100% of the departments, everybody on there is a firefighter paramedic or a firefighter EMT. And they hire them off those lists. They give a test that require you to have the EMT or paramedic certified when you take the fire exam. Then you go to the fire academy, and now you're a certified you're a firefighter. You have the credentials now that are mandated, but that's bullshit. Oh, they don't have. It doesn't matter whether you're on a civil service list or not. All those people that got hired when I was on a job that went to the fire academy. When I first got on, when they started going to the fire academy, they went to the Mass Fire Academy up in Stowe, whatever it is. But the thing is that then we got our own fire academy, and they went to our own fire academy, and we got them quicker, and we didn't have to wait for vacancies. So it doesn't matter. Once you get on a job, you have to meet the certification requirements to be certified as a firefighter in Massachusetts. It's just like we have to take first responder training, et cetera, et cetera. It's all statutory. But this is all. You know, they throw you a word salad. It's like listening to Kamala speak all the time. They give you this word salad. None of it makes sense. If you're waiting for an opening, whether the guy comes from your patronage list and he's your buddy's cousin, or he comes off a civil service list from a position that he earned by getting a grade high enough to be on that list, they got to wait for a vacancy to occur. Does the fire academy have a special building for political patronage hires? I'd like the answer to that question.
Yeah. Now, see, again, you're asking questions. You can't do that. You know, you get blocked for that. People get upset.
Look, there's one bottom line here. They can dance around this, deflect everything. They screwed up, and you can't use the fact that 90% of the people are as screwed up as you are to say we don't need sufficient manning. If you're trying to justify the fact that we do not need 4 men on a truck, you don't care about public safety.
That's it.
Period. That's end of story.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it because response times are irrelevant if you don't have adequate manning. Okay.
No, there's no question about it. There's no question about it, Chip. You're right. And with that, we gave you the last word. So I want to thank you all for watching. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday. Try to stay cool tomorrow. And remember, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Have a great day.